There are two factors that go into throwing, or two factors that go into flight.
There is a clear difference between nervous putting in a tournament and putting in just a regular old practice round.
C2 putting is all about swagger and it's all about confidence. It is critical to have perfect timing when you are step putting. Super important to understand that step putts can be broken down into two motions. It is critical that when the disc is coming through your power pocket, coolest thing about disc golf is there is no one way to do it. My name is Raven Newsom. I'm sponsored by MVP Disc Sports, and you are listening to the Chain Clankers podcast.
What is going on, our fellow Chain Clankers? Thanks for tuning in today. We have a really great episode for you guys. We got to talk with a new person on tour. You might have seen him this last weekend. Raven, he was a treat to talk to, and he had a lot of knowledge, and we got to see a little bit of his life on tour and kind of what he has been, working on tour and what he expects to see for his future. But it was really educational. We got to talk about a lot of different stuff, but Quentin's going to tell us specifically what we talked about today.
Yeah, man, it was so fun to do another player interview. I know you guys at home are waiting for another player interview, so you got to keep in mind these guys are super busy, and Raven even talks about it in this episode that they travel 10-plus hours in between events, and then they've got to play multiple practice rounds a day. So super thankful that Raven was able to stop by and we were able to pick his brain. We learned a lot today. We learned how to increase our distance by doing a couple of things different when it comes to your form and throwing a disc, as well as we learned how to make more circle two putts. Those putts will separate you from other people in your division, and the more of those putts you can make, the better you will score. So we talk about that as well and how you can make more of those putts and improve your game, lower your score. We learn a lot about Raven's life and how he got started at disc golf at the age of 4. You're not going to want to miss that story. And the support system that this guy has is totally awesome. It was such a good time talking to him about it, as well as we've got a new segment on today's show. We're going to be doing a pro player hot take. Not the best name. I'll come up with a better name in due time, but Raven shares his hot take with us on today's episode. And as always, we've got a great ace round for you. And in this ace round, I get absolutely roasted by Raven for one of my terrible takes. So you're going to want to make sure you hear that. And maybe you already know which take it is. But yeah, definitely listen all the way to the end. It's a great episode. If you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button so you never miss another episode. If you're watching on YouTube, leave us a like rating. It really does help, guys. It promotes us to the YouTube algorithm, and it lets us know that you like this content. So anytime you can leave a like rating and a comment, we really appreciate seeing it, and I love having those conversations with you guys over on YouTube. Without further ado, let's go ahead and bring Raven on. Raven, welcome on to the Chain Clankers podcast. Super excited to have you on. How are we doing today, man?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm super excited to be here.
And where are you right now? Where are we talking to you from?
I am in my van in Peoria, Illinois, as of right now. So right by the Ledgestone course.
Nice. How long have you been out there? I remember you saying that you were getting some practice in last weekend. Have you been out there for a couple weeks?
I just played the Preserve last week, so I was in Minnesota for that, and then I got here Monday, played a practice round at Northwoods, then played Northwoods and Eureka today, and I'm going to do Northwoods and Eureka tomorrow. And then I'm going to start the tournament. So it has been, my fingers are starting to feel the wear and tear so far.
And so, but I guess tell us how much of the tour is left. When does it end typically for you?
So for me, I'm on a full-time tour. This is my first year on tour, and I'll be out here consistently from here on out. But
oh, cool.
My tour doesn't end until November 8th, and I will be playing – that is like my last event, and that's the Myrtle Beach Open. And so I will be out and about playing a tournament pretty much every single weekend until then.
Nice. That's awesome. How hard is it to go from playing in a high-stakes tournament like to Preserve 3 rounds and then immediately turning around and getting a couple more practice rounds in? Because I imagine learning 2 courses in a couple of days takes quite a bit of effort.
It is a lot. It's a lot. And it's like, it's one thing that you don't think about too much when you're like, oh, like I'd love to go on tour. And it's amazing. Don't get me wrong. The driving aspect, there is a lot of driving. These places are not close together. And so it's like a 10-hour drive is chump change these days. And it's like you're trying to drive 10 hours and still get a practice round in that day because you're driving all of Monday and you're getting there on Tuesday. You're playing Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then starting your tournaments on Friday. The difference is Ledgestone this week is 2 different courses and it starts on a Thursday. So I traveled in on Monday, got here as quick as I could, played a round on Monday, and then I'm getting 2 rounds in on Tuesday and 2 on Wednesday, and then I'm playing on Thursday. And this is my first year on tour, so I don't know the courses. So it definitely leaves you at a deficit a little bit to start it off.
And how do you break your practice rounds down personally?
Personally, it depends on how many times I've played the course. So when I first play the course, I'm throwing about 4 to 5 tee shots as often as possible, unless I obviously have the hole dialed. But I'm going to throw 5 different tee shots, especially if I'm going to different landing zones. So I know what power I'm looking to put into my shots so that my next time when I come through, I'm dialing in 1 or 2 tee shots and really figuring out how I'm going to attack the hole. Because you're pretty much scrapping 3 of the 5 that you're throwing if you're playing to a blind landing zone. And Northwoods, there's a lot of blind landing zones. Throwing too short can punish you and throwing too long can punish you. So really making sure you have those distances is huge. So I'm always doing that. And then I'm always trying to approach from different areas of the fairways a lot of the time and hit a bunch of putts on the green. So I'll do 10 or 15 putts before I move on to the next hole a lot of times.
Yeah, that's really smart. I can imagine how that kind of gets you dialed in and just feeling a lot better about the hole than just kind of playing it once. And I imagine you're not scoring those practice rounds and getting that mumbo jumbo in your head, are you?
Typically not. But before a tournament, I try to play 1 competitive round if I can, whether it's for like a lunch or playing with one of your friends, whatever. But playing for score, having a scored round beforehand is nice, so you can set yourself a pace with a little bit of pressure. I like to have that pushing me to go a little harder because I have goals and objectives I want to execute during my round. And if I'm doing that, I know I'm setting myself on a good pace. And I know that there's room for me to grow or room for me to work on as I'm trying to continue my next rounds.
Talking about goals real quick, you said this is your first year touring full time. Did you kind of have some goals set out, before you hit the road about what you wanted to accomplish this year?
Yeah, I wanted to. So, brief backstory. I grew up in North Carolina. I've played North Carolina golf my whole life. And for those that don't know, that's just a lot of woods, a lot of woods. And MVP asked me what it was going to take to get on tour. We figured out a contract, and I was able to come out on tour. And the first part of the tour for the first 4 months is open, bomber, wind golf. And that is not what we dealt with. So my goal was to get to 10-15 and be getting in top 25 in my events. And I've gotten above my rating when I started. So I'm at 10-17 now. And I've gotten like top 25 at most of my events with a few ones that just weren't my week. But traditionally staying in the top 5-10% of the field.
Nice. That's good goals to have. And I've definitely seen your name come up plenty of times when kind of doing skip-based disc golf. I'm like, man, this guy's such a good value right now. I just waiting for the breakout to continue. So let's rewind the clock here. In a little pre-show questionnaire that I kind of gave you. You said you started playing disc golf when you were 4 years old. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so my dad was I grew up and my dad was super busy a lot. We worked a lot. My parents both had full-time jobs. And it was something that allowed me to be able to hang out with him while he got to do something that he loved. And so we got to play disc golf. And I was 4 years old. I have a disc in my hand. I'd go out and play. And as a kid, I'd play maybe 4, 5, 10 holes and then sword fight trees for the rest of the time. But I grew up with the sport and I grew up with a disc and I learned how to play and was playing local doubles with him by the time I was like 8, 9. And it was just like, it was fun. We had a good time. And then I started playing competitively when I was like 16. because I was also playing soccer in high school, and I used to eat, breathe, sleep soccer. And I still played disc golf, and then eventually I started getting really good at disc golf and just switched over when I got to college and started playing really competitively.
I guess, how did you know when you felt like you were getting really good at disc golf? Just winning locally or what?
To an extent, I started, so when I got sponsored by MVP, it was my freshman year of college, and I was 4 rated. And then by the end of the season, I was 994, and by the end of that season, I was 1013. No, I was 1003, and then I was 1008. And I was like, all right, I'm playing pretty good golf. I'm feeling more comfortable, and I'm playing with people that are good at golf, and I'm beating them. And so it was important for me to know that I could compete with better players. And then I started playing and winning more pro tournaments, and I won 6 pro tournaments in a row. And I was like, all right, like that was when I knew. I was like, all right, this is what I'm going to do. And I stopped like serving, and I did lessons. So I ran lessons for $50 a session for an hour. And then I would have like 15 lessons in a week on top of playing tournaments on the weekends. And I had online college at that point. So I was able to set up my own schedule and just do that. And it was pretty helpful.
Wow, that's really awesome, man. So how difficult is it to get to 1,000 rated? You said that it took, I want to say, about 3 years, right? Is that about correct for you, kind of getting your rating and taking it seriously?
When I started pushing for it, when I wanted to get to 1,000 rated, at that point, I was like 965. And I was like, you know what? Like, I could push to 1,000 rated. And it took me about a year and a half. And disc golf is hard. It is not an easy game, and you can't be good at disc golf every single day. It's just impossible. It is a day-to-day sport, but you can go out there and you can be as consistent as possible. So one of the biggest things, if you're looking to try and get to that 1,000 rated mark and you're looking to try and grow, is building consistency and form. And so I started to rework a lot of my form to where I could consistently throw it one way 85% of the time. And if I could do that, then I could start honing different skills of my throw, whether it's spin control, speed control, torque angles, rollers, whatever it was. I needed to be able to have the consistency first before I could work on different aspects. And in doing that, it was able to build my confidence, and throwing better shots in competitive rounds gives you the confidence to make more putts and continue to throw good shots, not throw good shots, miss your putts, and then try and go and throw more good shots. It hurts. So it's super, super helpful if you're trying to do that.
What would you say helped you out the most when you were working on your form and fixing it? Because there's so many YouTube videos out there, and everyone has a different idea on what good form looks like. And we've talked about this before, like, you can't really compare yourself to someone else, different body types. There's all sorts of stuff. What helped you out the most when working and fixing your form?
For me, my mom has a master's in early childhood and education, and my dad is a professor for paramedic classes in college. So I grew up learning how to teach. And so a lot of working my form came from teaching form to other people and teaching how I threw. So I was able to rework what it was that I had learned, make notes, and I have like full notebooks on it on like what I've done to adjust my form and what I'm looking to do for consistency. And then I was able to use that, turn it into notes and lesson plans to be able to teach to other people that were learning how to play this game. So teaching is a really, really good way to learn, especially for yourself. But knowing that when I'm watching these pros that are playing, watching Jomez, you watch any of the big YouTube companies that are or the big YouTubers that are covering these big rounds, and you're seeing the best players in the world throw, and inadvertently you start to emulate that, whether you mean to or not. It starts to happen. But noticing that I wasn't keeping myself as compact as I needed to was huge. And that is such an important thing. There's a lot of pulling over and across your body instead of through your body, and that is a game changer when it comes to working out your form.
If I'm somebody who is not really good at teaching or helping like others by like kind of giving advice from myself, or let's say even I'm, too self-conscious about my own form to kind of feel like I can teach anyone or anything like that. Do you have any tips or advice for someone like that who wants to improve their form? Like how could they go about doing that? Do you think like just filming themselves is enough, or what could they be doing?
Coolest thing about disc golf is there is no one way to do anything. There's not. You look at the best putters in the world and everyone putts different. You got Matteo, you got Rick, you got Paul, you got Nico. Like they all putt different. They're all phenomenal putters, right? So the same thing can go about throwing. You got Gavin, you got Matteo, you got Ricky, you got Paul. They all throw differently. So if you're trying to work out how to throw, you break down the fundamental components of what makes throws work, and you go and just look at it and study it and see what their common variables are and be like, all right, this is what's working, and film yourself and reapply and film yourself and reapply until you can start to emulate those things in your form, and your form will grow. But it's so important that you really are getting reps doing it the right way, not reps doing it the wrong way, because that teaches bad habits, and bad habits make you play bad disc golf.
Do you still work on your techniques and forms?
Yes, that is no doubt about it. If I want to be able to compete with these guys that are higher rated than I am and the best in the world, I have to stay true to my form and how I work. My form is different than a lot of people's, and that's okay. But I work at it. I hit the field. I work out my discs. I figure out how to put in more spin control and less spin control based on the tournaments that we're at. And it is critical. It is critical to have good fieldwork practice if you want to be able to compete. It's huge.
I've got two questions spinning off of that. The first one is, when you say spin control, what exactly are you talking about, and how can somebody maybe work on that? And you can kind of tie this to the next question as well. You said that field work's obviously very critical. What are some things that I could be doing out in the field that would help me the most?
Perfect. So one, a major component that not a lot of people realize, or it seems like people should realize but don't get just yet, is that there are two factors that go into throwing, or two factors that go into flight. You have speed, so the amount of speed that you're giving the disc, and spin is the amount of rotations you're putting on the disc. The more rotations you have that you put on the disc, the longer that disc is going to stay in the air. So it is critical that you're able to have good spin control for your disc. The more you can spin it, the longer your disc can stay in the air. The more power you give it, the more it's going to turn over and the more speed you're going to get. But if you have a lot of power and no spin, your discs are going to burn over or fight out way too fast. If you have too much spin and not a lot of power, your discs aren't going to go very far, but they're going to glide. So a lot of spin control is a lot of wrist control. And that wrist control comes from curling your wrist and snapping your wrist out like you would pop a towel. A lot of people say if you want to throw hard, you pop it like a towel. But really, that's just how you're spinning the disc. And spin adds distance. So a lot of people think that they have to get their arm speed up to throw farther, and that is not always the case. Like, yes, arm speed helps, but there are two variables, and you're really only looking at the one variable, which is speed, and you have to have spin. So good spin drills in practice is getting 3 different discs, putter, a mid, and a driver, and you're throwing the putter and spinning it straight and keeping it on line the whole time, and then throwing a mid and trying to hit the exact same line, but you're going farther. And if you want to keep this in line, you are spinning. So you're going to spin it harder to control that line. And then you're going to do the same thing with a driver, and you're going to try and spin it and keep it on that line the whole time. And so you can do different stabilities of mids, putters, and drivers, but you want to keep them all the same. So I'm doing overstable driver, overstable mid, overstable putter. And then I'm doing straight putter, straight mid, straight driver, and then understable, understable, understable. And it's important to help you learn the different touch control. So spin and touch are typically interchangeable. You have to have good spin control, and you have to have good touch to settle the disc by the basket. So it's super, super critical to make sure that you're able to use your wrist in your shots when you're throwing.
I know you said you practice those, different kinds of discs. For someone wanting to, maybe learn the fundamentals of spin control and wanting to start out, would you suggest it's best to start out with understable discs, because you'll be able to easily notice, when you roll them over?
Sure. I think understable mids are going to be your best bet to start learning spin control. Unstable mids, like we have a Hex that just came out. We have some new mids from MVP that are going to be coming out that are understable, and those discs are so good to learn how to spin a disc. It is very, very crucial. Make sure you're able to learn how to flip a disc up to flat, flip it up and turn it over and get it to flex out, and then flip it up, turn it over, and know that it's not going to come back with all of your discs, because all of your discs will do that, but you have to know what it's going to take to get them to do that. And so it's super, super critical to know all of your disc flights at all different points, so then you can pick the best disc for the right holes when you're playing all these different courses.
I want to back up for just 2 seconds and explore the spin control just a little bit further.
Sorry.
No, this is fantastic. This is truly fantastic. I feel as though I've heard from two different camps. One where when you're coming through and you're hitting the power pocket, your wrist should be locked straight, and then you're just kind of, snapping it forward, I guess, as the disc is ripping out of your hand. And then there's the other camp who, when you're coming through that power pocket, your wrist should be curled in. So when the disc rips out, there's more like, I guess, spin theoretically. Is there a right and a wrong way to come through the power pocket like that? Like, what exactly is your wrist doing when it's coming through the power pocket? Because I feel as though, A, if you're doing the wrong one, that could deeply impact how much spin you have on the disc. And B, if I feel as though something that could go wrong is you're almost like herky-jerky trying to like extra spin on the end when you should just be letting your body naturally do the motion. So if you could maybe just explore that a little bit more, I think that would be helpful.
So spin, there is no right and wrong in disc golf. There just isn't, right? There's so many different ways to throw it, like we talked about earlier. So there is no right and wrong when it's coming through the middle. You can have people tell you it's one way, and you can have people tell you it's another, and it's really just what works for them. It is critical that when the disc is coming through your power pocket, your wrist is in a position that you can give it the most spin for you. Whether that's locked for you, whether that's curled for you, it is what it is. But you'll notice that a lot of the players that throw farther are having more of a curled wrist as it's coming in. Gavin does a really good job of showing it. Ricky has a really good job of showing it. When he's in his power pocket, his arm is curled, his wrist is here. Because when it comes out, and Ricky's one of the farthest throwing players on tour right now, when it comes out, he is giving it more of that wrist opening up and snapping through. And that is a critical motion. But some people can get all that snap with a locked wrist coming through. So there's no right or wrong. It's about what works for you in particular.
Is that just something, you kind of have to go out to the field and just practice both of them for a while? And I don't mean like, going out there and practicing it, 5 throws for each one and then like, oh, this doesn't work. Like how long would you recommend?
I would say throw every disc in your bag 3 times and then try it again 3 times and figure out what it's going to be. So it's like, I guess 6 times over and over, but it's very important to make sure that you're able to figure out if that is going to be right.
So a question I have here, this will be my final question on this topic, and then I'll get us moving along.
Okay.
I feel as though there's a potential for maybe rounding to be caused by trying to maybe curl your wrist in. I feel as though, I don't know, just something like maybe you're trying to curl it too much and like focusing too much on getting your wrist to release the disc, that instead of coming through straight, you're coming through and then rounding as a finish. Is there, do you think that is a possibility, or is there a way to fix that if it's happening, or am I just going crazy?
There is a possibility for anything in disc golf. It's just bound to happen. I play with a guy that hit first available T sign today. It's just going to happen, right? And it doesn't matter how good you are or how good you are. You can curl by doing this, yes. It's stuff like that can happen, but it's all coming back to building that stroke that you can hit 85% of the time and then working around it and heightening the other aspects of your game. I built a stroke that works for me 85% or better of the time, and I learned a spin control that works there. You have to have a core swing before you can start hitting these other topics. Right? So if you're sitting here trying to make all of these changes right now and put all of them into it, it's gonna suck to start with. Like, in the nicest way possible, it is not gonna work out very well. It is something that you have to build. It's same as like if you're building like a structure, right? And you're an architect, you can't build something that doesn't have a strong foundation. And our strong foundation in this aspect is going to be our swing, right? Something that at 85-90% of the time we can execute each time, right? And then you're building up. And then you're like, oh, spin control, amount of wrist curl. And then you're like, all right, from here, amount of precision, the amount of torque. Then up here, you're looking, all right, how much speed am I balancing the spin with, the right disc choices, the right flights. And then you're just steadily building it up. And where you're peaking at your disc golf game. But you can't sit there and assume that you can put all of these core components together and immediately get this tower. You have to build it from the ground up. And it all starts with being able to make sure that you can have something consistently that you can do before you can work on the next heightened levels of the sport.
And I guess what would be a good test? How would you know when you have something and it's consistent?
I would always do it. So for me, the only times I've ever had to test stuff like that is when I'm working with someone or doing lessons with them. When I'm doing lessons with them, it's easier for me to see it in person. So I guess I haven't really had to test it any other way, but I would assume get a gauge for a course that you play, right, that is wooded. You want to have something that has gaps a lot, and then go through the course of your first tee shots, note how many gaps you hit, how many gaps you didn't hit, right? And then after working on this for like a month or 2 weeks, go back through and note the amount of gaps you're hitting, how many gaps you aren't. And over time, the more repetitions you have in your swing, the more consistency you get. It'll kind of show, but once you're hitting like 80-85% of these gaps, then it's time to start working on the next parts that can help you shape your landing zones or shape your spin control coming into the greens, or analyzing your right discs for the right shots, because sometimes it's easier to hit the gap with a fairway driver, but really it's a mid shot because it's a dangerous green and you're trying to control your angles or whatnot. So it's super. I don't think there's a right or wrong way to know, but when you're hitting about 85% of the gaps on your wooded course, it's likely time to move up, assuming that this is actually a technical wooded course. About the best I got for you there.
Yeah, I love this discussion that we just had. I think there's a ton of value that just came from it. If you guys are enjoying what you're hearing right now, make sure you leave a like rating down below if you're watching on YouTube. I want to step back from this lesson right here, and I want to talk a little bit more about your journey in disc golf for a couple of minutes. So
okay.
Started at 4, still a pretty young guy. How old are you?
22. Been playing
22.
for 18 years.
22. Been in the game for 18 years. That is so long. I can't do the quick math, but incredible nonetheless. What point was it in your journey that it went from this is just something I like to do to, oh, wow, I'm pretty good at this, and then I can maybe go pro on the tour? I know earlier you had mentioned, you won 6 pro tournaments in a row. Was it kind of that moment, or was there something before that?
It was kind of before that. I knew that I had been growing in the sport. I was really attracted to watching my rating grow. I was really excited, and I was stoked. And when I hit the 1,000 rated club, I was like, all right, this is something that I can be good at, and this is something I can compete in. But I'm not the big dog in North Carolina yet, and I'm still not. But I wasn't the big dog playing with the best players back home, and I was like, that means there's still so much room to grow. And so I started to grow. I started to play more tournaments. I started to push myself, and I jumped up to like 10-13 before I left. And I was like, all right, this is something that I can do. And then we had another semester of college where they were like, we're just going to have to do all online learning at NC State. And I was just like, I don't learn well like that. I'm a more hands-on learner, and that is something that I struggle with. And I'm not in college just to get a degree. I want to learn about the material, and that was not a way for me to learn in a way that I thought was going to be helpful. And so I took the opportunity to go on tour for a while before going back to college. And right now I am incredibly happy with my choices.
Nope. Coming from two parents who are professors, how did they feel about that?
My parents are awesome. I am incredibly grateful to have them as role models. I'm incredibly grateful to even be here because without them, I wouldn't. They were so supportive, so loving. They supported me going and chasing my dream. They were like, "We want you to do this. We think this is an incredible experience, and if you fall on your face, that's okay." And I think they kind of expected me to fall on my face a little bit, and they could not be happier for where I'm at. My dad's one of those people that doesn't really show that he's happy about stuff that's going on, but it is pretty sweet. My mom told me the other day that for the Des Moines challenge, when I was on like the lead card for the final round, that he had the live coverage up and was just like sitting in his room watching it, not really talking to anyone, and it was like it was very sweet because that's not something that my dad is ever known for. And it's amazing to know that I have the love and support that I do from my family back home. It means a lot.
That's awesome, man. There's so many people out there that probably wish that they had that. So super happy for you that you do have that. That's awesome. So is it maybe a little bit of that right there that keeps you motivated in disc golf? What keeps you going when you're out on the road for weeks on end?
Oh man, so many things. So many things. The support and love from fans and like people back home is huge. People that love and appreciate what you're doing is amazing. Everyone that sends good luck texts, you guys are awesome. That's very much appreciated. It is something that some days we're not going to have good weeks. And there are times that people are going to be like, man, like, I don't know if I can cut it out here. And this lifestyle is hard. It is not easy and it's not for everyone, but it is super, super amazing knowing that you have the love and support of people back home. And I have been a very driven person since I was a kid. I always knew what I wanted. I was good with my money. I always knew what I wanted to do and that I was going to be successful. And I pushed myself in every aspect. I got into the colleges I wanted to. I did well in all the sports I tried out. Like this is something that I have worked for, and to be here just keeps me fired up because showing that I can work, and this is only my first year on tour, I am very excited to be able to push this for the next 5, 10, 15 years of my life.
Just real quick, I guess, what would you say to someone that may, your age and maybe they don't have the support from the family and they have the rating and they feel like they can compete and maybe they're not as driven as you are. They don't have that confidence and they're thinking about going on tour and they could probably be successful on tour, but they can't quite make that step and do it. What would you say to them?
Disc golf is hard. It really is. And it isn't the tour itself isn't for everybody. That does not mean that they can't go and compete. But what I would say is if you're looking to try and make that next step, get to a couple of pro tour events. Go and play them. Don't just play one for the year. Play 3, 4, or 5 and see how you're doing as an average throughout all of them. Because that is something that is going to show whether or not you have the chops to be able to compete. And I'm not saying like 25th place is not bad. And like these are the best players in the world that are showing up to all of these events. Like I am incredibly grateful to have a chance every single weekend to play with the best players in the world. Like that is amazing. And I get to compete with the best players in the world. And anyone that comes out and they go to one of these big tournaments, those players are there. So it's not just you're going to put more weight on it. So play 5 and get a gauge for where you're at. If you want to make that next step and you're not feeling a support just yet, tell your family that if you want their support, right, just go and see what you're made of for real on the course with these players first.
I think that's a really awesome answer, and hopefully that definitely helps some folk out there who are wanting to make that jump. And for you, when you made that jump, was there any moment of like, oh man, what am I doing out here? This was a mistake. Like I'm playing with some of the best players in the world. I don't know if I got this. Was there any moment of self-doubt, or has it always been like, nah, man, I am the man. I'm going to make this happen. It is going to work out for me.
I feel like I'm the man is never a statement I'm ever going to say, but I have always wanted to be able to do this. And when I have wanted things in life, I will not I am incredibly driven. I always have been. And there was not a second that when I came out here that I thought I wasn't going to be able to do it. Like, I'm a good player. I am happy with where I'm at, and I have so much room to grow in this sport. And there's not a moment where I thought that I don't have the drive that the top players do, because I do. And I am very excited to push that. And that was, for me, knowing I have that drive has been so good for me. And it's helped me out as I've started growing in this game and growing on tour. It was huge.
I definitely have a lot of respect for the players who have just started out on tour or they're testing it. Because I think, there's a lot of players out there who don't tour who are just as good and they could compete on tour, but they have other stuff. They have family or like jobs or certain stuff that they're not allowed to. But then there's, some maybe who they could, but they haven't quite made that leap. But the ones that are going out there and trying it, instead of, just being that guy, the local hero, the pro, who's known in their city as the best, and he shows up to those C tiers or to those league nights, and he's like a celebrity, because he's the best guy in town. Instead of just being that guy and being happy with it, they're going out there and going to these tours and seeing what they're made of. And I feel like I have a ton of respect for them, just for going out, spending their own money, their own time, traveling, just to show that they're not just like that local good guy, and they're actually a legitimate good player. And I think that says a lot. And I think you're right about, the best, competing against the best players in the world. I know we were talking the other day about disc golf isn't in the Olympics, or it could be in the Olympics in the future or something like that, which it doesn't have enough exposure in the rest of the world for it to be competitive enough. You wouldn't have enough people from every country to make a competitive, Olympic showing. It would be a bunch of players from the US and Europe kind of thing. But whereas most of the players are from the US and Europe, and majority of them probably from the US, especially the best rated players, you are competing against like the best in the world. That's like not just a statement, like you literally are like the top rated players. Probably like 80% on the top 10 in the world are from the US.
Yeah, I think there are two that are not, and that's Vaino Makala and Jesse Nieminen. I'm not 100% sure there. I know Oskari is pretty far up there as well. So we are predominantly playing the best players in the world right now.
Yeah, I think that shows a lot. And it's, like 25th, some people are like, oh, like what'd you place? And they might be like, oh, 25th, like you said. Like some people might say like, that's not that great. Like 25th, like place, that's amazing, especially, if it's your first year out, or if it's courses that you have never played before and you got 2 practice rounds in and you place 25th, like that's incredible. And I feel like that kind of just shows you what you have to look forward to. And that's very exciting.
Yes, it is. I'm incredibly, incredibly thrilled. There are so many things that can go well in this sport, especially with preparation. And the guys that we're competing with have played these courses for 10 years or more. And it's like, all right, like they get it. I'm still learning. And it's something that I'm going to, when you stop being a student in this game, you will stop being able to compete. And it's so important to just be able to take these things in stride, take the losses, take the successes, take them in stride, and just let them shape you into a better player, and do everything you can to mold that. And it is super critical.
So I want to switch gears now. You are currently number 2 right now when it comes to Circle 2 putting. How do you get to be number 2 in Circle 2 putting? Like, what I guess is the big difference between putting in Circle 1 and putting in Circle 2? Is there anything you're doing differently in your putt?
Oh yeah. So for me, it is something that I always teach, right? But when I teach people, I teach them that there are 2 strokes. You have a stroke for Circle 1 and you have a stroke for Circle 2. So if one of them isn't working, you can still rely on the other one, and you're not having an entirely terrible putting day. For me, that works. It's not the same for everyone, and that's fine. But what I teach is that you have 1 putt for Circle 1 and 1 putt from Circle 2. So I step putt from Circle 2. For me, I have built this stroke, and that stroke is entirely based on timing. It is critical to have perfect timing when you are step putting. And so I'll spend 30 minutes before a round just step putting until it is feeling pure and good. At D-Glow, I was first in the field for C2 putting, and I was 65% from C2, and the next closest was like 45. And it was just because I was driven and practicing. But that C2 putting is all about confidence and working on your timing. And I have too much confidence in C2 putting right now. It tends to hurt me every once in a while. So it's good to make sure that you don't get too big for your britches. And it's great to miss one sometime that just like completely three putts you, and you're like, all right, fair enough. It's good.
Circle 2 is definitely one of those that it's obviously important for everybody, but especially for rec players and advanced players, some of them who don't have those big arms and those cannons. A lot of times from your drive, you end up in that circle 2 range where,
Yes.
For pro players, it's a circle 2 putt. But for, a lot of new players, it's kind of either an upshot or kind of a circle 2, but I feel like it's a good place to develop. And if you can improve that circle 2 putting as an AM, as a rec player, I feel like you have a huge advantage on the rest of the field, because a lot of them might, either lay up or they might not even be able to run it. But I feel like if you're being able to run circle 2 putts as a rec or advanced player, you give yourself a lot more potential for birdies than most people would.
You do. Learning how to run circle 2 putts without being too dangerous is huge, because it's not just be like, oh, I can make it. You have to get yourself up to the percentages to be able to do that. Like same as when I talked about earlier about building a stroke, right? You build a stroke at 85% that you can execute, then that's what you take and that's what you build on. But circle 2 putting, you need to be making 1 for 3 before you're sitting there and being like, all right, I'm running this. And you need to be making the comebackers. You can't be putting for birdie from circle 2 and turn around and bogey that hole. You just can't do it. And you should not do that on flat ground ever. If you do, you've done something silly. Like that is how you lose strokes. So you really need to make sure that you are confident in your abilities to do it. C2 putting is all about swagger, and it's all about confidence. And you have to walk up knowing that you can be that guy that's going to make that putt, regardless of if someone just misses it or if they chain out or if they do something else. You have to know that you can do that. And it's critical. It's so critical to be able to know that you have the percentages to do it. So in rec and intermediate, it's not about just being like, oh, like I can make this 1 in 8 times. Like lay that sucker up. Like you'll 4 it a heck of a lot more, and you'll 2 it. So lay it up. Don't have fear. Smart golf is good golf. And I teach that to everyone I've ever had as students. Probably the one thing that they're always going to remember is smart golf is good golf. Don't be afraid to lay up. Don't be afraid to throw a disc 150 feet and then throw 300 feet instead of throwing 350 into the tight gap or whatever and then throwing 150 to the basket. It is so important to know that you don't always have to park the hole. So smart golf is good golf. Playing to get putts, playing to high percentage areas, and laying up. Disc golf is a numbers game, and it's so critical to make sure that people understand and remember that when they try and play the game.
Raven, I am eating up everything that you are saying right now, man. This is music to my ears. Definitely something that I have been working on these last couple of months is my step putting, and I've literally seen what you're talking about, going from I can make this in a 1 in 8 chance to I can probably make this in a 1 in 3 every other kind of situation. I'm honestly to the point where I would rather be at 35 feet than 25 feet because I have more confidence in that step putt than I do in the 25-footer. That also says I need to work on the 25-footers. But
yes, build from in to out. Always.
Yes, for sure. So I guess that leads me to this question of maybe you're somebody listening and you want to get better at your circle 2 putting. You find yourself coming up, 35, 45 feet short of the basket, and you want to get more of those birdies. What kind of drills do you have that can help somebody with a step putt?
Super important to understand that step putts can be broken down into 2 motions, right? Your first motion is bringing the disc into your core, bending your right knee, assuming that you're right-footed, but whatever your lead foot is, bending that foot, bringing your weight to your center and bringing the disc to your center. And then that second motion is exploding, is pushing off with that right foot, pushing off with your lead foot, extending your arm out and following through on the basket. Those are your two motions, making sure it's a 1-2 motion. So I can load and extend. And it's very important to make sure it's not just all one motion. Because if you're trying to load, extend, swing down, swing up, and follow through all in one thing, it's not going to be as consistent. And the goal is to make disc golf as consistent as possible. So it's super important to be able to deliver the putt and follow through. And if you want to get good at C2 putting, whether it's step putting, whether it's straddle jumping, whether it's just regular inline putting, the biggest and most crucial factor is understanding that you have to follow through in your shots. You've got to follow through. You've got to deliver the disc to the basket. And if you're in C2, delivering the disc to the basket is the most important variable if you want to be good. Because you can't airball right and left. That is the biggest no-no in disc golf. You have got to miss high or low every time. Airballing right and left will kill you in this game. So you've got to make sure that you are delivering, extending, and following through on the basket and in the center of the pole. And sorry, one more thing. In practice, I never count my putts unless I'm hitting the pole. If I hit right side chains and it goes in, it doesn't count. It's so critical to make sure that you are hitting the pole and you are training yourself that your only good putts are putts that strike the pole, because that is when you're getting in, not getting lucky. Be like, oh, I squeaked that one in there. Like, that's a good putt. No, that putt sucks. Hit the pole, and that's a good putt.
Yeah, I know I'll go play rounds with my buddy, and from circle 2 putts or whatever it is, and I'll hit the cage and he'll get upset, like, oh, that was stolen or like whatever. And I'll tell him, like, I would rather hit the cage or the basket and miss on those circle 2 or even those like barely circle 1 putts. I would rather hit the cage and miss, or like hit it every single time or hit the pole, than to airball it, because it says like you're more dialed in, and it's just fun rounds and it's for practice. There's no point to, I guess, be close and then miss over it and be 20 feet long. Now I would 100% of the time hit the basket and miss. Is I'm gonna feel more confident.
I will take a rollaway chance every single time, but I will not miss left and right putting. I just refuse to do it. Sometimes you can hit chains and miss left and right. Sure, that's fine. You hit the frame of the basket, but you have got to hit the frame of the basket in all of your putts. You got to do it. If you're going to run it, you got to know you're going to hit the basket or lay it up. If you don't think you can make it and it's a dangerous run, just accept that it's not your time to hit that putt and lay it up. That is the best way to shave strokes off your round. It was so easy to 3-putt when you're like, I should make this one, and it's like 60 feet through the woods. You're like, yeah, this is it, and it skips off the top and goes to like 40, and you're like, oh, why did I do that? And it's like, it's critical. It's so critical to understand that it's numbers based, and knowing where your strengths are and where your strengths are not. Knowing where you're weakest is one of the best things you can do in disc golf.
The wind obviously affects putting in general, but does it affect circle 2 putting more than circle 1 putting? When you're doing a step putt, is there anything different you're doing with a wind read than you're doing from maybe 15, 20 feet away?
Oh boy. That's a tricky question, because wind itself is tricky all alone. You have to know what a crosswind's going to do. You have to know what a tailwind's going to do. You have to know what a headwind's going to do, but you also have to know what a cross left to right, what a cross right to left, what a head right to left, what a tail right to left. When you have a tailwind that it feels, but it's actually going to lift your putter. So it's so important to be able to make these minute adjustments. But I would say from C1, it actually impacts my disc more than it does from C2, because your percentages from C1 need to remain high. And it's important that they stay high so that you can have the confidence to throw good shots. So C1 putts require more spin in the wind. If you want to cut through the wind and have more consistency, putts have to have more spin. And so from C1, it is critical that you're able to give that spin, but not as much speed, because if you mess it up, you don't want to be going a million feet in the wrong direction. But from C2, you can typically make your same stroke and make adjustments for the wind because it's coming in at a similar rate, but you're able to give it the speed that you need already and the spin without having to put more on it than you do for C1. So in C1, you're having to put on more. C2, you can keep it about the same, and you just make the adjustment in your jump or in your arm swing and your upswing or something like that. I'm making sure I'm following through higher or more to the right, making the minor adjustments for the wind. But C1 is so important to spin the crap out of it.
That's really good. I hope people are taking notes, and if they're not, go back and listen to it again. But I know we're having a good conversation when time is flying by. I can tell it's getting dark there for you. But
Sorry.
before we get you're good. But before we get into this ace round, I know we have a new segment we want to introduce today, and Quinn's going to tell us a little bit about that before we get into the ace round and let you go on your way.
Yeah,
Okay.
for sure. So I am someone who is on Twitter a lot. I imagine if you're on disc golf Twitter, you've seen Austin Hannum's hot takes, Brody Smith's hot takes in disc golf, those kinds of things. So what I wanted to do was I wanted to implement a little bit of that into our interviews with pros. So we're going to be starting a little segment where the guests on the show will give maybe their hot take or change in disc golf or something in disc golf that could be changed or altered or something along those lines. So Raven, what was your hot take or change to disc golf?
I have said, and I feel like this is super important and not a lot of people think about it. When you are playing in tournaments, it gets really frustrating when the spectators are not corralled. And this is not me trying to be mean whatsoever. I appreciate that there's so many people there, and I appreciate that they want to see us compete. But it's important to understand that lead card and chase card are not the only cards that are out there playing. And we get people that run across our fairways, run across our greens if we're on third, fourth, fifth, eighth card, because we're not that far behind these lead card, but there are people that are running all across our fairways to try and get views. So I feel like a hot take for me would be having specific areas that spectators are allowed to be and marking those off with rope or something along those lines, that this is your designated spots that you are okay to be at, and then having people that can enforce that, having people that are down there. But like D-Glow, for instance, was the most distracting tournament I think I've ever played in. And it's not, I'm not a whiner when it comes to stuff like that. I absolutely love that there are so many people that want to come and play. But I think it's also important that we understand that, or not even understand, but it's important to keep everything as level as possible for all the players that are playing. And you want to have an even playing field. And I think maybe just, I don't know how best to go about it, but finding ways that would be best to keep spectators off of other fairways when they're playing, or from walking onto the green so that they can go and see the next shots or something like that. It's super important, I know, or it definitely hurts my chances if I'm having a good round and I'm playing well and I'm 8 through 11, and then there's spectators that I'm having to ask to get off the green or off our fairways so that I can go and throw. And it takes my mind off the game a little bit more. And if you're playing earlier or later, that's not something you really have to worry about. And I feel like that's a variable that, with some critical thinking, could be changed or avoided in some way.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think it's going to be hard to find somebody who would disagree with that. And you literally look at other sports. I mean, I'm going to compare to ball golf here real quick. You never see that. There is very clear defined lines for where fans can and cannot be, as well as some fans literally just like, they're there on hole 18 and they watch everyone come through hole 18, or you're there at hole 4, whatever it is. So if disc golf even kind of did that, and maybe after the final card has passed through that hole, you can be behind them and watch them on the next hole, but then you can't ever go in front of them, because I feel what you're saying also, that's definitely just a player safety and fan safety issue that absolutely should be addressed. I loved it.
Yeah. And I don't mean to step on anyone's toes that's watching it. If there's anyone of sway that's like, wow, that was kind of rude. And it's not that at all. I appreciate everything that the PDGA is doing. I think they are doing amazing. And I know how hard it is to hit all of the different needs and wants of all of the people that play the game. And I totally get it. And I understand that everyone out there is doing the best that they can. I think there are some things that we can do to improve. And I would love to be able to see some changes implemented there. But I don't know how realistic it is either. It may be difficult. There may be variables I'm not thinking about in it, but I would love to be able to see some changes or be able to help with that in some way.
But, just thinking about that, like, that's not even, I guess the PDGA or Pro Tour could do something about that. But the way I see it is, if you're a spectator at a professional disc golf event, you paid money to be there, you are probably a player yourself. I can't imagine how many spectators are out there that aren't players. So they go to courses out all the time. So they know what it's like to have a kid or someone run through your fairway or someone get in your way. So this isn't an issue, with the PDGA or anyone not implementing enough stuff to keep those people out of your guys' way. This is just people with, like you said, bad critical thinking and really just being rude to the rest of the players there. Even though you're a spectator, you're a player of the game first. You're there watching other players, but first you're a disc golfer. You need to understand that the other people on the cards, they may not be on the chase card, lead card, like you were saying, but you guys are competing for that same spot, and they should be respectful of that. And as a player, they should know better. So I think that's great. And I think at least everyone listening here, stay off the fairways. You know better than that, and spread the word. It's not that difficult.
It can definitely, with more involvement in it, could be much easier to be handled. And I think people get caught up in the moment a little bit, and that's totally fine. I appreciate that they're there and they're excited to watch the people that are playing the best play. I love that. And I love having a crowd follow me when I play. It is one of my favorite things in the world. That is when you're at the pinnacle of the game and you are having fun with a crowd that wants to see you play. That is, I love being able to share what I do with the world, and I think that's great. And I love that people want to come and see that, and they want to see the best players perform. But it might be better to have some stipulations of specifically where people can be, and people just knowing that they can be better, or being respectful of everyone that's playing the tournament, not just the lead or chase card or the people that are predominantly in the hunt right in that moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And I think, hopefully people listen and spread the word, spread awareness. But I think with that said, we are ready to get into the ace round. So these are the same 5 questions that we ask every single person that comes on the show. And
okay, because I forgot them already. My bad.
No, yeah. No, you're good. And this is kind of just to get everyone's, opinions, kind of just get into their brain a little bit. But the first question we have for you is, you're taking a buddy, a new player, maybe somebody that came to a lesson of yours, first lesson, and they want to buy their first set of discs. What one putter, mid, and driver would you recommend them buy?
Okay. The putter, because it's the best putter in the game. You can quote me on this one right now. The Envy. It's amazing. I don't care who you are, but the Envy is the best disc. And not just the one that James threw in the basket to win the world championships, but Envies are good discs. Having something that is a dependable flyer for beginners, for anything, that's a disc you can hyzer flip up to flat. That's something you can throw flat and can stay neutral. It's an all-around versatile disc that you can push to varying distances. So being able to have an Envy is huge. The second disc to have in the bag, I would say, would be our new Hex that just came out. The Hex is such a neutral flying disc, and it's one that if you release it flat, will go flat, especially if you're a beginner. But if you release it flat, it'll go flat and finish. Release it with some hyzer, you can get a shape up to flat and then out. Or if you release it with a little bit of ante, it'll drift on ante. So it's something that can show you where you're making your mistakes and where you have room to grow. And then drivers, for people that are just beginning, I typically don't recommend drivers ever. I'm a putters and mid guy. I think that's huge, especially if you're just learning, because that's what's going to teach you how to play. And I always tell people that when you pull out the driver and the fairway, those are the aggressive plays for the hole. You can throw a putter in a mid. You can on most holes, unless you have a 380-foot water carry. I'm probably not going to do it. But understanding that putters and mids are the regular plays, and that as you go up in speed, that is getting more and more aggressive for the hole, depending on the shape. So knowing that when the amateurs play or people that are just beginning, they're like, oh yeah, like what driver should I get? I'm like, none. Get a driver. You should be getting a mid and a putter, learning how to throw those, learning how to attack holes with those, and then work your way into drivers because they can go a little bit farther, but only when you have the control over mids and putters.
What would you say to somebody that says mids are fake?
Oh, golly.
Fake?
That they are a scam.
Oh, golly. Just call me out, why don't you?
You don't think mids are real discs?
Okay. If we're going to open the can of worms, here we go. So, a couple of episodes ago, we did a debate show, and I put out there that you can do anything with a 4-speed approach disc that you can with a mid-range. That it's pretty much the same thing at the amateur level, and that
a putter. You said a putter.
Let's just take a real quick moment and acknowledge the fact that a 4-speed and a 5-speed are mid-ranges, and 3-speed does putters go. So really, you're saying with a 4-speed disc, that's a mid-range.
Well, I'm going by how they have it branded, and if they're branding a zone, a harp, whatever as a putt and approach, then I will classify it as a putt and approach.
Agreed.
That was the point of my argument, that a putt and approach disc can do the same thing that a mid-range can.
No, I don't agree with that one.
That's okay.
Yeah.
That's okay. Not many people agreed with me, and therefore I have decided to put more mids into my bag.
On your side there.
Yeah, I've listened to everyone's arguments. I've put more mids in my bag. I'm working on it. I'll come back to y'all in a little bit, okay? Maybe it wasn't my best take in the world. That's okay.
Well, time out. I think something that could be acknowledged is the fact that if you have to throw a putter and you're trying to go 290 feet, say, for a lot of people, we'll say it's a 90% rip for you. I don't know how good you are at disc golf, but let's say that's 90%. You're throwing it 290 with a putter. That's great. With a mid, you can throw that same distance, similar control at 60%, right? So it's not about being able, I can do it, but you're taking down your chances. Having to throw something harder does not make you more accurate more often than not. And building timing is what makes you accurate. And if my best timing precision is at 80%, when I'm throwing, I try and find discs that when I throw them 80% are going to pull off the shot that I need, the shot shape that I want. And it's so important to make sure that you understand that, you could probably do it with a putter. You might be able to do it with a putter if you throw it hard as heck, but you're going to have to throw it at 90% to pull that off, when you could throw a mid 60% and shape it and have a much better chance of timing your landing and your gaps and your swing.
That is great advice. Like I said, I love it. I am putting mids in the bag. I am trying to work on it. All right. I will come back to y'all. Like I said, that was good advice. Literally makes perfect sense. I just know for me personally, when I slow down on, so like in a position like that, throwing 80% compared to throwing 50, 60%, for my game, for whatever reason, at right now, this moment, the throwing not as hard, it's not going to go as well.
So why don't you practice that in the field more?
Exactly.
It should be
That's what I
significantly
need to do.
easier to throw 50% instead of throwing 80% significantly.
Yeah. So that's something I need to work on. I got to get to the field. I get it. Thank you, Horatio, for derailing this episode. But that was a good discussion. I took something of value away from that, so I do appreciate that conversation. Let's move on to question number 2 here in the ace round. What is
so sorry.
No, you're all good, man. That was a great conversation, and that's something that I needed to hear as well, not just from Horatio. So, favorite course you have played and one course you would love to play?
Favorite course I have played? MVP Open, the Maple Hill, but I'm sure you guys hear that a lot. So maybe I'll come up with a different one. Harmon Hills is a beautiful course in Tennessee. It was like 10th in the world at one point, or I was top 10 in the world in Ulti World for like most beautiful courses. Private property in Tennessee. It's gorgeous. It's well worth checking out. And then secondly, you said when I want to go play. I cannot wait to go play Smuggler's Notch in Vermont. That I haven't got to play Green Mountain Championships yet, and that is a course that just screams my name. So I cannot wait to go check that course out.
Yeah, I definitely understand why a lot of those courses on the PDGA Tour and the Pro Tour are the selected courses because they're just beautiful. And Smuggler's Notch is one of those. That's definitely on my bucket list as well. And just real quick, because I remember you mentioned that you said your season doesn't end until November. You play Myrtle Beach. And do you know why there's a reason why we don't see any of those late season tournaments like on the Pro Tour or anything like that?
I'd say one, for player health. So we're not playing all the way through all the seasons. But two, they take a lot of organization, and it's tough. And then third, it's out of season. They don't want people playing in all the bad weather. They want people playing in all the cold that you're likely going to get. There are a lot of factors that go into it, but you have to be able to have a Pro Tour Championships. You have to be able to have an off season so you can go and work on your game, go and heal up, get ready for the next part of the tour, because the tour is grueling. I have played a tournament every single weekend since the February 14th. So Valentine's Day weekend, I've played a tournament every single weekend since then.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It's
I definitely say it's, even though it's disc golf and it's not as strenuous on the body as other sports, I would definitely say it's a young man's sport, or a young man's game as far as touring full time. Just unless you're like I feel like Ricky Wysocki is a great example. He is not, one of your 20, 21-year-olds out there on tour. But I know recently, because of Lyme's disease and all that stuff, he's had to change his diet and do a bunch of stuff, and he's like healthier than ever. And he's still being able to compete. And I feel like you have to be consistently doing that to be able to continue on tour for that long. Otherwise, those weekends take a toll on your body.
They do.
Okay, next question.
Doing what I'm doing right now is the young man's portion, playing every single weekend. Those guys are so good that they don't have to play all the weekends. And now I'm not really. It's okay for them to take off weeks, and for me, it'll be okay for me to take off weeks too. But it's like I'm starting the year learning as many courses as I can. My first year on tour, I want to play as many events as I can. Minus if I'm having any injuries or anything like that, I'll take it down. But it is important for me to learn all of the courses and all of the ways that I can, so that the next time that I come in, I am able to have that base knowledge to build on and not have to push myself as hard. And so really I'm investing in my future while playing right now and getting all the base knowledge that I can my first year.
That's very true. Very good point. Because I guess we'll see, someone like Paul Macbeth, who he picks his tour very specifically. He knows like what events to play, get the most points, and be able to compete. And you'll see him not play for a couple weekends or something, come back and just dominate or whatever, because he has gained that luxury, that he put in the work. Yeah. Cool. All right. Question number 3. One tip you would give to yourself when you just started playing disc golf seriously, let's say. I guess, high school time. You can't make it if you don't putt it.
You can't make it if you don't putt it. You got to get the disc there, and you got to hit it hard. They'll go in. But the amount of distrust I had with baskets and putting to start disc golf was rough. Like, I was always a good putter when I wasn't in tournaments. And then when I first started being in tournaments that were like PGA or singles rounds or something like that, it was like, dang, like, I wasn't putting very good. And that was one of my biggest strengths in regular rounds. So it definitely confused me. And so I just have to, I always tell myself now, when I miss low or I never really give it a chance, it's like, you can't make it if you don't putt it. You got to putt it. I would rather hit a 20-foot comebacker than go and tap in this 5-footer when I'm not giving them a chance. Otherwise, I'd rather be hitting a basket consistently, blah, 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 blah. But if I'm having a bad putting stroke, I need to make sure that I'm giving the disc a chance and I'm putting it smooth and putting it hard, and then take the results if I have to.
I think that's really good advice. I just want to step back and say that because there is a clear difference between nervous putting in a tournament and putting in just a regular old practice round. And people will be like, oh, man, I make the ones in the practice round, or I always make the second putt. I never make the first one. I never make the ones in the tournament. And and what you just said literally clicked so well in my head, because it was like, you might as well just put it hard and just go for it, because what's better, doing that and missing and like at least feeling good about your stroke, or not giving it a good run and barely sneaking over the cage, or missing it anyways? Like, if you're gonna miss, at least
what's the worst
effort?
What's the worst thing that you could do? Miss? Yeah. Why not give it your best chance of making it? Doesn't make any sense.
That is awesome advice, man. That is definitely something I'm going to be taking for sure. So our fourth question we've got for you: what is your favorite memory playing disc golf?
The first time I beat my dad playing disc golf. I was like 13 years old. I played a 6-down round. It was solid. He cried a little bit. It was a very surreal moment for me as like a 13-year-old child. But I will never forget the look on his face and the more respect he gave me when I was playing after that. And now, in turn, how it's molded into what I'm doing now, and the amount of just support and love I feel for my family. I feel like it all really stemmed from then, from right then. And he was like, "You're 13," and he just beat me. Like, I'm pissed. He was also like, he was super kind and caring, and it's amazing to be able to have that memory to go back on and be like, all right, this is it.
That's really cool. You know, I'm having a kid soon, and I feel like that.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I feel like that is, you know, just thinking about that, like that's going to be, hopefully I have that moment, but they like disc golf, you know, I'll be happy with that. But
Okay.
I feel like that will be a very bittersweet moment. I'll be, you know, if they beat me at 13, which like I'll be older, but I'll be happy that they're that good, but I'll also be sad that they're beating me. Like it'll be fun. But that's awesome. All right, last question we got for you today. What is the biggest mistake you see new players make?
And this is tied back into what I've said before, but new players going out, and because they're on the tee pad, they throw drivers because it's a drive. That is not how this game works. You pick the disc that flies the best for the gap, and you throw that disc. But there are so many people that go out there like, oh, this is definitely a DXT bird moment. And then they just send it. And you're like, oh, God, that's not good. And it's like 180 feet, and they have putters and mids. But they're like, this is definitely a driver shot. Or they pull out like a 14-speed disc to get it there. And it's like, geez, you could throw a putter there at this point. But it's like, you see way too many people trying to throw drivers before they understand how to throw drivers. And yes, you can say the same thing about discs, that you're throwing something that you don't know how to throw already, so might as well make it a driver. But learn the fundamentals with putters and mids first, and then grow into drivers. Grow up in speed. Start with 2 speeds, 3 speeds, and work your way up to mids at 4s and 5s, and then fairway 7s and 8s, and just slowly drift into drivers. Because you can get, at most courses, you can score with fairways and below on everything and not have to use drivers, because high-speed drivers will penalize your minor mistakes in angle. And then you're going to think that you're a bad player. But if you're throwing that same shot with a mid-range, your angle control is going to be great. So it's super important to make sure that you aren't using drivers before you know how to use drivers.
That is awesome advice, Raven. We appreciate you coming on the podcast. I know we went a little bit longer than we anticipated, but I know I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone at home learned a lot as well. Where can the people follow you at on Instagram or any other social media that you have?
My Instagram is at Raven Newsom, just my first and last name combined. And that's pretty much all my social media. I have lessons and stuff that I've done on YouTube. It's under Raven Newsom on there as well. And I have 9 up and more to come, but they have to get edited and posted, and that's been taking a while. But there's a lot of the components I teach and we'll talk about here that are on that channel, so that can help teach a lot of people. It's a lot of stuff that I go over in my lessons and critiques when I help people individually. But yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time. Definitely, looks like it's getting late there for you. We really appreciate it. You're in the middle of a tournament. Everyone's busy right now, so we really, really do appreciate it. We love talking to you guys, and just to kind of get a little taste of what it's like out there. It's interesting for us back here at home, just doing the rat race. So thank you so much, and best of luck to you. Can't wait to see more of you on tour, and safe travels out there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I appreciate you guys having me on. I'm glad we were able to be able to talk and learn a little bit more about my life and what life on tour is like.
Thank you for listening to the Chain Clankers podcast. Make sure you follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Chain Clankers, and hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to us from so you never miss another episode.